Sofia Thornblad is our guest for this segment. You may not know the name, but you certainly know her work. She is both the chief curator and director of collections at the Sherwin Jewish Museum. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
What a wonderful jewel you work for.
Oh my goodness, I'm just the luckiest. It's really a special place.
I go from time to time when there's a turnover, in displays and exhibits and all that sort of thing. My first trip took place 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. I thought, I've never been here. So grabbed the wife and away we went. And it just turned out it was a day that they introduced me to all of the most incredible Jewish artists and writers of comic books I've ever seen. I had no idea so many Jewish folk were behind that industry.
Yeah, I didn't really either. Our previous curator was particularly interested in pop culture in that sense, and so that's something that he really brought to the table and brought to what we focus on at the museum.
One more thing and I'll move on, but one of the things that grabbed me, they didn't just present Superman. They presented Superman, the original look, the person that created him, and how. So each display of every comic character that you and I know today was explained in full. I gotta tell you, it knocked my socks off.
It sounds like a great exhibit. It was before my time, but I've heard really good things.
It was really something to see. Now, I think you've got Old Country to the Plains. Steve
Marcus.
Marcus?
So he
is
a Jewish artist from New York, and this exhibit just opened a couple weeks ago at the Sherwin Miller. What he does is this really cool kind of funky pop art, but with Jewish or kosher themes. And he uses skateboards as his canvases. So up on the wall, we have all of these skate decks hanging in our Brodsky Gallery. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and the themes for this exhibit are, of course, just, Jewish culture and life, but also specific to Oklahoma. So if you're not Jewish, but you're from Oklahoma, a lot of the art will resonate with you.
I saw there's a commercial running on television right now, and it shows this woman, she's kind of stocky, and she's walking across a field stuffing straw in her blouse. Then she gets up on this rack, and what happens is she starts yelling away at the birds. She takes the place of the scarecrow. Very, very funny approach. There are some interesting approaches to art that come screaming out at you every time you go to the museum where you work. How is that? Where does that come from?
Well, that's a great question. Some of it does depend on who happens to be the curator, at any given time. Part of what's so great about my job is getting to decide what kinds of art we have up. So what I'm looking for when I'm working with artists is someone who's going to have something that's different or exciting, maybe a bit unusual. I think Steve Marcus's work is a great example of that. But we also, we try to switch it up. We try to have paintings, photography, sculpture, different things to keep people engaged and hopefully coming back.
How does one envision a display? Do you work months ahead of time before you order one in?
Absolutely. Some of that, again, depends. Some of our shows we get from other museums or foundations, institutions, things like that. But when I'm thinking about what's going to be on display in the museum, I'm usually planning things about a year in advance.
Really?
And it takes up until the point where an exhibit actually opens to get all of my ducks fully in a row. But as of right now, I'm already planning for next year.
So you're working way ahead of the train.
Yeah, but it's a fun, creative process.
I understand we have some video from, if it may have already run, but we have some video from of the museum, the Sherwin Miller Museum of Jewish Art, that they're going to roll here in just a second. What are we seeing here?
These are the stained glass windows. Well, that's what you just saw. This is our Kristallnacht memorial. Kristallnacht was on November 8th or 9th. It was November 9th of 1938, and it was a violent pogrom against the Jewish people living in Nazi Germany. In many ways, it marks the formal start of the Holocaust. Jewish stores were destroyed, as well as synagogues and homes, and it also marks the first deportations of prisoners to concentration camps.
I can't even begin. I thought about this several times. My father was a liberator at Heidelberg.
Wow.
And Dad came home with stories that he found difficult to tell. But I can't begin to imagine people, let's just say I lived in a time when that sort of thing happened. Let's say I'm sitting in my home in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all these military forces come in and at gunpoint force me out of my home, go through it, take everything of value, and if they don't burn it, they trash it, and then they force me into a concentration camp. And my life goes wham, overnight.
Yeah.
Overnight.
It's unimaginable, honestly. And some of, I think, what's difficult to understand or makes it even more difficult to imagine is that it was this sort of incremental slow burn that happened. It did for many people happen overnight in the sense that they were taken from their homes and directly, deported to a ghetto or eventually a concentration or death camp. But before that, there was incremental discrimination that happened stage by stage over a series of years as people had their rights taken away from them. And that's also really scary to think about, because then if you put yourself in their shoes, what's that point of it's time to try to escape here before it's too late? Because nobody ever envisioned, during the Nuremberg laws in 1935 that defined who was Jewish and who was not, that would eventually escalate to death camps, but it did.
It's the most intensely sad period of world history that one can come across. That one man with a group of about 12 completely flip-flopped the world's view of what he was all about. And what evolved from that was a series of warning signs that we all can see from day to day.
Yeah. What's interesting about the evolution of the Nazi Party is after World War I, Germany was in this place where, they had lost the war, they were economically having a really hard time, and unfortunately, the Nazi Party became this symbol of hope for many Germans, because in addition to their, outright anti-Semitism, they were also promising better jobs, for the economy to grow, and for your average German to have this sense of pride that had been lost during World War I. So a lot of people bought into that.
Threw that line out, started to reel them in.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
Where are you located, for the folks at home that might not know?
So we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma on 71st and Lewis.
71st and Lewis.
Yep.
Open to the public, what days, what hours?
We sure are. So we are open, let's see, the only day we're not open is Wednesday. And during the week, on the other days, we're open from 10 till 5. And on the weekend, so Saturday and Sunday, it's noon to 5. So.
Thank you so much for coming in. And thank you for letting us see some of the things that have been on display and may still be.
They are, yes.
At the museum, and folks can go by and get a closer look.
Please do. Please come and say hello.
I guarantee it. Thank
Thanks
you
so
again.
much.
We're all out of time. Thank you for being a part of it. We'll see you back here next time.